Hello. So glad to welcome people who have come for this particular presentation. And I said to her last night, I think this is going to be as much about you as it is Hillsboro Village, because she has lived it. And I won't take a moment of her time except to say I'm going to pass around this that comes from Sarah, who talked with us a couple of years ago about Second Avenue when it was bombed, right after it was bombed, when we were still at the Green Hills Library. Well, she's the brains behind the archives now, and she has a Magellan of the Air that comes from Nashville. And I'm just going to pass these around and take one if you think you can go. And with that, it's all yours.
Okay, and sorry, that was at the end of my presentation. I thought it was great because it had a lot of the village merchants in the picture. We had done an ad in the Scene for a couple of years, just wishing everyone happy holidays from all the village merchants. So that was what those pictures were about.
Talking to the silver microphone.
Okay, I'm not a good speaker. Y'all be patient, and I may get things wrong. And if you've got stuff to fill in, let me know. But
And your name is?
I'm Sandra Shelton. But you were supposed to hear this talk. Yeah. I was going to get to me in a minute. But you were supposed to hear this talk today by Yvonne Eves on her book, Nashville's Hillsboro Village. This is a great little book from Arcadia, and as you can see, I learned a lot looking through it that I didn't know. There are a lot of great pictures. They're all black and white, but she covers the entire neighborhood. I'm really focusing on the retail strip because that's where my business was for 22 years. So, I want to thank Jean Roseman for helping me set up my first ever PowerPoint, which I'm still learning to operate, and Tracy here, who helped me with all the technical stuff, and T. Minton, who's the historian at the Belcourt Theater, who helped me with filling in some gaps and some pictures. I'm hoping we'll get a presentation from them later on, maybe next year, about the Belcourt. My friend Lucy Sweeney listened to me go through this one day and gave me some pointers. Sarah Arnst from Metro Archives found some great pictures for me, and she's my go-to for family history, Nashville history, whatever. Manuel Zeitlin gave me a lot of insight about different buildings there. He was in the village for a long time. And Troy Horner, back there, who had Peabody Shoe Repair for 30 years, and I'll be getting to him later. Anyway, Nashville's Hillsboro Village, my connection to it was I'm a native Nashvilleian. I grew up here. I was a member of Belmont Methodist Church, which is in the village, and attended there up through for many, many years. And I would often sneak out of church service, unbeknownst to my parents, and go across the street to Wilson Quick to get me a cherry Coke. My grandmother lived on 24th Avenue across from St. Bernard's, and she and I would walk to the village when I was a little girl to go shopping at Woolworth's. Sometimes McClure's, but usually Woolworth's. I attended Hillsboro High School and Vanderbilt University. Then in the 70s and 80s, I shopped at the stores there for clothing. I had my hair done at the hair loom. When I was in graduate school, I worked part-time at McClure's, then the Davis Cookware Shop, and the Davis's Hardware Store. After many career shifts, I opened my store, Pangea, boutique and gift shop, in 1987. I was on Belmont Boulevard in 2 different locations. I moved to Hillsboro Village in 1997, where I was there until I retired in 2019. My presentation is partly in memory of Ann Tiley, who passed away in January of 2022. I'll be showing her paintings of the businesses in Hillsboro Village that existed during 2001 to, uh-oh, what happened? Tracy? What? What happened? See, this is not going well already.
There you go.
Is it going to do that again? Okay. She painted these businesses between 2001 and 2011. She and I had talked about doing a book together with her paintings, my photographs, and some of the history that I'd uncovered. But COVID hit, Anne passed away, and I dropped the ball. Anne was a singer and songwriter as well as a painter. She was good friends and performed with Peggy Snow. Peggy's known for painting buildings slated for demolition, and there are two of Peggy's paintings over on the big easels. That was the block that Zeitgeist was in and Peabody Shoe Repair when that block was torn down. And Peggy is in the back, if you want to hold up your hand. Okay. She's done great work all over town, especially painting the Jacksonian on West End. Anyway, but Anne's paintings are more impressions of places around her neighborhood that she loved. We're going to travel north on 21st Avenue South along the west side here, cross the street, and come back. This map was created in 1998 when H.G. Hill demolished one whole block, and that's this block up here. You see these all say formerly. It was the first of two blocks to come down that were owned by them. The other block was this one right here. Musical chairs is an apt title for the business in the village, as you will see. The merchants, I think it was my idea. If not, somebody tell me. The sign, we installed a sign as a nice entrance into the village at the south end. Twice it was hit by drivers in the middle of the night that left the road. Alcohol might have been involved, I don't know. But the first driver was insured, so we rebuilt the sign. The second driver was an uninsured motorist, and we got rid of it and gave up. This retail strip of buildings known as Hillsboro Village has been active for over 100 years. There have been numerous changes in the built environment as well as the character of the businesses. For much of its existence, there were a variety of businesses: grocery stores, drugstores, bookstores, record shops, clothing and gift stores, shoe stores, and shoe repair, a dime store, department store, hair salons, bars and restaurants, gas stations, theaters, and more. The buildings were 1 and 2 stories with varied architectural detail. Now they're mostly clothing stores and restaurants. The buildings are taller, more box-like, and mostly painted black or white. Hillsboro Village urban design overlay was adopted in 1999, and I think that was a reaction to the Hills tearing down that strip of buildings, which happened in '98. But it was to limit new building height and provide guidance for streetscape, building massing, and setbacks. I don't know how successful it's been. You'll see with current pictures. This here, yeah, we're getting to this. H.G. Hill owned this first block, and it was home to one of their groceries until 1948, when they moved down the street to 21st and Blakemore. There was an open chicken yard behind the grocery where chickens were slaughtered for market. In the 1950s, this picture, the first block looked like this. The corner was Edith Caldwell's dress shop. Yeah, she was one of the Caldwells. She married Horace Hill Jr. in 1960 and closed the shop. Manuel Zeitlin, who later occupied the space, told me he thought Edwin Keeble designed this space. And this was beautiful blocks of limestone with a big picture window and an angled entrance. It was really great. And I think it's likely Edith and Horace were friends with Edwin Keeble. Anyway, the rest of the block you'll see Child's Toggery, Warner Drugstore, Tucker Photography was upstairs. And you can actually see the whole block. So there's Woolworth's, McClure's. This may have been White Market. The Belmont Theater is still there. And there's no Oxford House. This is Vanderbilt here. All this green. Yeah. This is the same block in the 70s. Henry Schofield's photographer studio had taken over the corner. He was in business from the 70s to 1993 when he retired. Next door is Mills Bookstore. They had moved across the street in 1971, moved from across the street in 1971, and were there until 1990. Cotton Music Center, which sold new and vintage guitars from 1961 until this row of buildings was demolished in 2013. There's Wilson Quick Pharmacy, where I got my cherry cokes. Village Jewelers, which was owned by my dad's friend from church, Robert Roddy. Mr. Roddy sold that business in 1982 to a Mr. Shower, who then moved it across the street to the new H.G. Hill building in 1999. Here are two pictures of Mr. Schofield and a close-up of that beautiful entrance. There are Bernie and Adele Schweid in front of their Mills Bookstore, and a close-up of these businesses here. Better picture here, if you can see, there is a neon shoe sign that was part of Peabody Shoe Repair. In this picture, it's gone, okay? And then Village Jewelers still there, all fired up, had moved into the drugstore. I think, and this space was occupied by Barrymore Gifts briefly while their building was torn down. They moved out, moved over here, and then had to move back. Let's see what else. Also in that space was my friend Catherine Snow's Shop Antiques, which was a antique store. Really nice. Okay, Village Jewelers still there, Cotton Music is still there, and Mills Bookstore is still there. On the corner is Tim Jones Photography, where Mr. Schofield had been. And upstairs, it's now Mitch Karam and Casablanca Modeling and Talent Agency. There's a better picture of their sign. Then by this time, Posh was in their first location. They took over the Village Jewelry spot. They expanded to shoes, and then they moved down the block to a much bigger space. This upstairs was occupied by many businesses over the years. Tag Art Gallery was run by Jerry Dale McFadden of the Mavericks. Bongo World, Bob Bernstein's offices were up there. My Pangea Storage was up there for a while. There was an architect, a seamstress, all kinds of businesses. They're all gone. There's Peabody Shoe Repair and Troy Horner at work. Troy's father, John, bought the business in 1976, and Troy eventually took over. He was in business there till 2013 when the building was torn down. He moved to the Hundred Oaks area at 718 Thompson Lane behind the Applebee's. He continues to do great work and is training young people in the art of shoe repair. His father, John, passed away last year. Troy was our go-to at Pangea for repairing handbags, shoes, and lots of other merchandise that we had. I called Troy yesterday because I was curious about that shoe sign that I mentioned earlier. Well, he told me that when they were having to move out, he and his father discovered it in a closet. And Troy had it refurbished and put up in front of his new shop. Zeitgeist, an art gallery founded by Janice Zeitlin and Manuel Zeitlin Architects, took over the corner spot in 1999 and remained there till 2013 demolition. They relocated to Wedgwood, Houston. They're at 516 Hagen, right around the corner from here. Cotton Music also relocated to Wedgwood, Houston. They've now merged with North American Guitar and acquired Carter Vintage Guitars, and they just recently moved into the downtown Antique Mall building on 8th Avenue. I talked to Kim this weekend, and they are delighted with their new space. I'm not sure when to mention this, but Manuel had tried to talk H.G. Hill into preserving this corner when they built their new building, but that didn't happen. This was demolition in progress. Progress. Here's how it looks today. The new building has offices and residential over retail. It's anchored by Jenny's Ice Cream in one corner and Double Dog Sports Bar on the other. Barista Parlor, the Nash Collection, and the Impeccable Pig that you'll hear about later are there in the middle. All chains, I believe. The alley beside the building was once home to Owen and Harold Bradley's recording studio. That was 1953 to 1955. There's an historic marker on the alley side of the new building. Now, I've heard conflicting reports about that. I had read that they were there in 51 when the roof collapsed due to snow, and that would have been the 51 blizzard in Nashville. So I need to research that further. But here's a picture taken from the parking lot behind McClure's, and this is the one-story building. It was later occupied by Acme School Supply until 1998, when All Fired Up had to move from 21st to this space. There were large parking lots behind McClure's and the other buildings. They're now taken up by buildings, which did excavate for underground parking, but so I don't know. Parking has always been an issue in the village since I was there. The next block housed a Piggly Wiggly at the corner of Belcourt and 21st. Belcourt was then called Carlton. I think it was the same time as the H.G. Hill grocery in the previous block. There were 2 or 3 groceries in the village over the years. But this block had 2 long-term tenants. Woolworth's 5 and 10 store was there for 51 years, 1936 to 1987. McClure's department store, owned by Nelson and David Andrews and Evelina Harwell, was there for 39 years, 1948 to 1987. Their building was owned for much of that time by the Andrews family. The Woolworths building then became a series of restaurants. First was Multi Bob's from 1990 to 92, and then Flying Fish from 92 to 93. They were owned by the same person and maybe a little ahead of their times. I don't know if anybody here remembers those places, but they were bars, really contemporary decor, and a lot of fun, but they didn't last. Bosco's moved in 1995 and was there almost 20 years, closed in 2014. The one-story part of McClure's became Jonathan's Village Cafe, then Sam's Place, and Sam's closed in 2015 after a fire. There's a picture of Bosco's and Sam's, and the back door of Bosco's as it was being gutted for renovation for what's now a clothing store. That piece of equipment is also sitting in the parking lot that's now a big building. The two-story part of McClure's became Rifle Fire, which I don't have a picture of, then Bronco Bell. I think they were both Western-style clothing stores. Then Carissa's Armoires and Antiques. They had been in the back of Bronco Bell, but in 1998 took over the entire space, and they were there till 2009. When Posh, which you saw earlier, moved into the space. Today, Hop Dottie Burger Bar is on one corner, Altered States, clothing store chain, and Posh make up the block. Kathy Hadley, who's the owner of Posh, was able to buy the building in 2020, so that means stability for her. This block has changed very little over the years in appearance, except when it was the Piggly Wiggly, but that's the Piggly Wiggly building right there. Now, the tale of two theaters. The Hillsboro, in May of 1925, the Hillsboro Theater opened at one end of the block with its entrance on 21st in the building that is now the Villager. At the other end of the block, the Belmont Theater opened in August of the same year. Both were silent movie houses, and the Belmont crushed the Hillsboro. It was a chain owned by Tony Sudicun, and they had much more access to first-run movies. Their Spanish-themed building had an elaborate, beautiful interior, and their pictures in Yvonne's book. I don't have them. It was torn down in 1961 for an office building. The Hillsboro became a venue for live performances and moved their entrance around to Belcourt, which was still then Carlton, and I'll come to it later. This block was occupied by White Market, which I don't have a close-up picture of, but it was owned by Peyton Hoag's grandfather. Peyton was a local musician and photographer and one of my boyfriends in high school. He came in the store one day and said, "Do you know my grandfather owned this business?" No. So I researched that, and he also told me that the concrete floor slanted from back to front so they could hose out the market at night. It was a meat market. I have not heard that they slaughtered animals there like the grocery, but anyway. The two businesses after White Market and before me propped their furniture up on blocks so that the surfaces would be level because the floor slanted. When I took over the space in '97, I decided to build a wooden floor that was level. So then we had to have a ramp for the entrance, but I wasn't going to prop up my furniture on blocks. This block at the time also had, next door was a sign that says sandwiches and bar and beer to go. Get your beer to go. Then the Singer Sewing Machines, the Cupboard Bakery, the Naomi Shop, Family Bootery, home to Red Goose Shoes, the Toggery, Hammond Organ Studios, and I had never heard that till I saw this picture, and the Whitley Building. That was the office building that took over from the theater. Samuel Kaplan owned the bar building and the business there from 1947 until his death in 1968. It remained in the family until last year when Ann Parriott, owner of the Villager, was able to purchase it. Good for her. Really pleased. She was a good neighbor. Samuel and his wife Sarah owned the Naomi Shop business. They named it for their oldest daughter. And I graduated from Hillsboro with her sister Dossie. So we've been in touch recently, and unfortunately Dossie doesn't remember a lot about the shop. I even talked to Naomi. She doesn't either. So this is the block in the 70s, I think. The Needlecraft Shop was Mary Lou Davis, wife of Ted Jr., mother of Ted III, Stuart, John, Mark, and Scott, operated the needlecraft shop from the late 60s or early 70s until 1997. She retired, and I was able to move into the space. The bar by then was the Pewter Tankard, Old Mexico, Clothing and Imports, Don's Fashions. And I'm not sure if the cookware is where that wooden awning is, if they had moved in there yet, but that would be their space. So Don's Fashions, Village Imports, the Tigery's still there, and House of Bamboo. This is Ted and Mary Lou Davis. The first picture is in the needlecraft shop. The second picture is later. They've both since passed away. Mary Lou in 2001 and Ted in 2015. This is Old Mexico with the owner painting the storefront for their opening, and I don't know his name. If anybody knows who he was or is, let me know. The second one is Johnny Allen inside Village Imports, his business. Then House of Bamboo with their announcement, it's a boy for the Ikeda family. There's David under a kite display inside the store. The store was filled with imported gifts from inexpensive to grand, as well as art. David was a fine artist himself and organized the Village Art Festival for 20 years, starting in 1964. House of Bamboo was there from 1962 to 1995. I love shopping there. I think it may have influenced my store a bit. I have since learned that David designed his Nashville home, which has been torn down and replaced with a McMansion. He also designed a house on the lake, and I've yet to get out and explore for that. I was too busy getting ready for this talk. Pangea moved to the corner in 1997. We had clothing. This is what I would tell people when they say, "What is your store?" Clothing, jewelry, gifts, books, cards, toys, folk art, home decor, you name it. It was great fun while it lasted. I kept the Sherwin-Williams logo on the back door, apparently the needlecraft shop had too, as a nod to the history of the building. And there's me inside the shop with our last store dog, Coco. Over 32 years in business, there were 4 dogs, Reba, Chester, Bailey, and Coco, 3 Chesapeake Bay Retrievers, and 1 mutt. This was my closing announcement, 2019. This is how the block looked most of the time I was in business there. The Villager, of course, and I don't think you can see in this painting, but the Hillsboro logo at the top of the marquee is still visible. If you drive by there today, you can see it. Then the Davis Cookware and Cutlery Shop, which opened in the 70s and later expanded to include Scott's Coffee Club. The cookware was run by Ted, and Scott, with John's help as expert knife sharpener. Larry Woods and wife Sarah Lee opened Bookman, a used bookstore, in 1995 next to Pancake Pantry. They moved across the street to this location in '98 when their building was being torn down. It was expanded to include Bookwoman in 1999, and they remained in business to 2016. Provence Bakery and Cafe was started by Terry Carr Hall in 1996, offered artisan breads, wonderful pastries and sweets, breakfast and lunch specials. It closed in 2018. Terry, the owner, had moved to LA, and even though he came back once a month, he lost his longtime manager, and that was the end of the business. I'll have to say, the closing of Bookman, Bookwoman, and Provence was really devastating to us. it kind of took the heart out. And this was after the Hill block went down before. Anyway, here's a picture of Ted the Third inside the cookware shop, and then a later picture of John between the two Teds inside the shop. There's some Provence staff, whose names I don't know, amongst the bread, and Sarah Lee Woods in stacks of books inside her store. After me, Arcade moved in. They had been on the side street of the new H.G. Hill building on Ackland, and they moved to my space. I've lost my place. So they were a locally owned children's store. They had clothing, books, and toys. It was really great, but they didn't survive COVID. Yeah. Molly Green, a local clothing chain, moved in after them, and this is what the inside of my store looks like now. They moved from one Davis property in the block to this corner and remain there today. I forgot to mention the Davis family owns the corner as well as 3 other addresses in this block. Those 3 have been combined into one business, Peacock Jewelers. I'm skipping that. Deborah Hewitt, who I met recently, named her clothing store Rebecca James to honor her grandmother, Rebecca, and her business partner, James. This space was Hey Rooster gift shop right after Bookwoman left, but I think COVID had an effect on their business too, and now it's Rebecca James. It's a one of locally owned store. And they had a lot of clothes that looked like Pangea, so I recommend going there. The Greenery, a fast casual, healthy restaurant, moved into the Provence space. It's owned by 2 women who graduated from Vanderbilt. Unfortunately, it finally opened after a building collapsed during renovation. On the corner of the Whitley building was bought by Educators Credit Union in 1971 and totally renovated in 2002. Cornerstone Financial Credit Union became the new name in 2005. Now we're going to cross the street. Here's another H.G. Hill block owned by them and housing the Pancake Pantry, which opened in 1961. So that at least dates this photo to the 60s, and aren't the cars great? Yeah. Owner Bob Baldwin saw the one in Gatlinburg. I always wondered about that, and talked the owner there into giving him a franchise. So the other shops in this block at the time were Belmont Men's Shop, Jenny's Florist. I recognize their logo, but I can't read what the entire sign says. But there was a Jenny's Florist there. Then Barrymore Gifts, who eventually moved to the corner spot and then across the street and back. Musical chairs. On the corner was Belmont Barber Shop, and I could see when I expanded it that there's a barber pole and a barber standing on the corner. In 1995, H.G. Hill built a new building in the parking lot here next to Pancake Pantry so that Pancake Pantry could move in there while they tore down the block. This was a tenant they did not want to lose, which is not the norm for them. But as you can see, this is the line, a couple of pictures of the lines at Pancake Pantry, even in the snow. Robert's son, Bob, took over the business and remained owner until 2017, when he sold to Crosby Keltner, who Bob thought would carry on its tradition. So far, I think that's true. Let's go back. Barrymore Gifts was owned by Marilyn and Henry Foyer. They had moved to the corner of the building at Wedgwood and then, like I said, had to relocate across the street to the Hill property while this building was torn down and reconstructed, and then moved back. If you ever shopped at Barrymore, you know that can't have been an easy task. Crammed with merchandise would be an understatement. They closed in 2002. Now, this was Thousand Faces when they were in the old building. And there's the owner, Linda Arden, inside, I'm not sure which store, but, and then a painting of what,
She owned Thousand Faces.
did I not say that?
Linda did.
I didn't say 1,000 Faces?
I think you did right.
Okay.
She's
Yes.
a friend of mine. She was
Yeah.
just delightful.
Yes, she is, and I've talked to her this week too. I've talked to so many people that were neighbors this week.
You still have a store?
Well, I was getting to that, Kim.
Good.
You notice Kim always has his collar turned up. I always have this bandana on. We're like, you can recognize us. Okay. I was going to say, 1,000 Faces opened here in 1995 and had to relocate beside Sunset Grill while the building was torn down. They moved back in 98, and she closed the store in 2020, but now has an online business, 1,000 Faces. Yes, and I looked at it. It's a good website. In its existence, that older block had another H.G. Hill grocery, a knit shop, a linen store, several restaurants, clothing stores. It was really hard to research because they changed the street numbers in that block more than once. So, the new building, let's see. The new building has also had its share of comings and goings. But Village of Flowers is still there. Village Jewelers was there a good while, but not today. This is the building today. On the corner is Dress Up, a clothing chain, Hester and Cook, a local gift and tabletop store, Village of Flowers, Crumble Cookies, Wilder, and Pancake Pantry, a mixture of locally owned small businesses and chains. The next corner of 21st and Belcourt, there was a gas station from at least 1927 to 1993. Then it was a Dunkin' Donut, then the New York Bagel Cafe, and in 2000, Jackson's Bar and Bistro opened. They had a covered outdoor dining area and a few parking spaces. It was owned by Tom Sheffer, who closed it in 2018. Jackson's was torn down, and during the excavation for this new building, the business next door collapsed. It was the Impeccable Pig. It was during the day. There were people in there, but everybody got out. We watched it happen from because it was right across the street. The roof of part of Bob Bernstein's Fido complex was also damaged, and he had to close part of that for quite some time. Here's what that collapsed corner looked like in the 60s. There was a bookshop, Stokes and Stockel, Patty's Record Shop, Model Shoe Rebuilders. Yes, there was more than one shoe repair in the village. 2 or 3 according to Troy, and now there are barely that many in the city of Nashville. So Troy is your go-to. Troy, raise your hand. There was a hair salon and Jones Pet Shop with its iconic sign. Jones Pet Shop had been on the corner of Wedgwood and 21st since the late 1930s, but swapped locations with American National Bank to end up here. It closed in 1994. Here's the same block in the 1970s. Sergeant Pepper's Whole Earth Store. Yay! I shopped there. Model Shoe Rebuilders is still there. Patsy and Faye's Heirloom. They had opened in the same spot that Faye's brother had had a salon. It was called Charles Jr.'s. And Jones Pet Shop. Behind Jones was Walker Brothers Garage. That's been torn down and is now parking. There's Patsy Austin and Faye Shannyfelt at their front door, and a picture of their bench that was a great hangout spot. Unfortunately, both Patsy and Faye have passed away. Faye in 2018 and Patsy in 2022. There's Patsy inside the shop. Patsy always did my hair. There's looking towards the back of the shop. The back was where they kept the refreshments. If you were a regular customer, you were offered refreshments. I was a regular customer. No, didn't have to bring your own. And another picture of the bench. Then this is the block. When? In the early 2000s, because Ann painted it. I don't have pictures. Natural Selections, jewelry store and cat rescue, run by Robin Adair, was in the corner. She had moved here from the spot next to Sunset Grill when Thousand Faces moved in. She took the place, I believe, of Village Imports, which was a different Village Imports than the one that had been across the street. There was a Baskin Robbins. Boy, in the summer, that was every afternoon. Taste of Tokyo, known for their sushi and their spunky, entertaining owner, Lucy. Bob Bernstein's Fido in the former Jones Pet Shop and Heirloom. Bob saved one of the heirloom signs, and it hangs in the portion of his restaurant that was the Heirloom. He also discovered and rescued 2 ghost advertisements that were on what had been an exterior wall when he expanded into the Taste of Tokyo space. I've known these were called ghost advertising, but I had to look it up last night, and I loved the Wikipedia description. It's an old hand-painted advertising sign that's been preserved on a building for an extended period of time. The sign may be kept for its nostalgic appeal or simply indifference by the owner. Bob was not indifferent. Thank goodness. And finally, Bob saved the Jones Pet Shop sign in place after many letters and phone calls to zoning, because in 1992, Metro had passed an ordinance making it not compliant. We're very glad to have it there, and it's part of why he named his business Fido. This is the block today. Spice and Tea Exchange, Fido, and where Bob's business Fetch was, which was more of a to-go place, had been, there's now Game Point, which is a game board store that he has an interest in. I haven't seen that. It's pretty new. Now, on the corner across the alley, when this building was being stripped for a renovation, the old Mills bookstore sign appeared. It was his first location in the village. It was soon painted over, but one of my employees snagged this great photo. The other end of the block had a dance studio in the 20s, but was home to hardware stores for the next 60 years. Home Supply Hardware was the most common name, but there were several business owners, including Sam Clement, whose place was nicknamed Hippie Hardware. I knew Sam. The Davis family, with son Mark in charge and me as part-time helper. Pat Peck and Jerry Mercer ran Honky Tonk Hardware from 98 to 2000. And they had live music Thursday through Saturday nights. Yeah. This was the block in the 2000s. Village Bridal, was on the corner where Mills had been. There'd also been a fabric store and a seamstress. Rodney Mitchell Hair Salon was where the Bonton had been. The Bonton was a salon that I think was in business since at least 1930. They ended up moving up Belcourt to a little house because of rising rents. And I think Rodney Mitchell eventually relocated up on that strip of Belcourt into a little house. Neither one are there now. On the corner, where the hardware store had been, my friend Susan Castle retired from being a physician assistant and opened Firefinch. It was a furniture and gift shop. But at one point, she subdivided the space and sublet to C Optical Shop. Again, I think rising rents had that effect. She moved away from furniture to selling more clothing and jewelry, finally moved the store downtown to her other location on Church Street across from Printer's Alley. But the bombing and COVID convinced her it was time to really retire. Here's the block today. UAL is a discount designer clothing shop. Lux Nails. Why can nail salons always afford the expensive rent? Nail salons and banks. C Eyewear is still there. And J. Marie, which is another clothing chain. Those are all chains. Okay, I know you've been waiting to hear about the Belcourt, but that could take up an hour by itself, and I'm hoping you'll hear about it next year from T. Minton. I'm trying to make that happen. When it transitioned to live theater, it was briefly home to the Grand Ole Opry. For longer runs, Nashville Children's Theater and Nashville Community Playhouse. T sent me this drawing of what the Belcourt side entrance was supposed to look like. I'm not sure that ever happened. But there's a photograph when it was the Nashville Community Playhouse. Then in the lower left is when it returned to being Belcourt Cinema, and that's how it looked from the 60s to their present renovation. Which was 2015, 2016. Here's a picture of the upstairs interior before renovation with Toby Leonard, the programmer, looking out the window. The portrait on the left, no one seems to know anything about. Either its history or where it might be today, maybe Toby's basement. Pangea also had a storage space up there, but I got kicked out when Toby wanted it for offices, so had to feature Toby. Here's the renovation in progress. Elle Long, who is the membership and administrative manager, me, and Stephanie Silverman, the executive director, in our hard hats. On the lower left, this was the renovation of the 1925 theater in progress. You'll see the beautiful ornate gold surround that you'll still see there if you go to a movie in that theater. There's the Belcourt today. Beautiful, beautiful building. Tuck Hinton Architects received an Excellence in Development Award for their work on this building. Correct? Well deserved. Across the street is the Dragon Mural. This was created by Adam Randolph, sorry. Yes, I was going to say that too. And David Glick, son of stained glass artist Lanny Glick. Created in 1995. It was refreshed in 2015 by a group led by, and I may say this wrong, Andy Rudloff. It was a effort from Hillsboro West End neighbors who raised money, and she had a day where everyone was invited to come help paint. The mural was in honor of the mosaic dragon just up the street in Fannie Mae Dees Park. Around the corner on Ackland is Village Cleaners with their fabulous sign that's still there. I learned it was the home of the first coin-operated laundry in Tennessee. In the 50s, they expanded to add dry cleaners, and there's no longer a coin-operated laundry. The only remaining service station in the village on the corner of 21st and Ackland is still there. You see the Walker Brothers garage sign in that first picture. Yeah. Okay, Belcourt on the east side of 21st was home to restaurants starting in the 80s. Let's see. Randy Rayburn opened Sunset Grill in 1990. It was a casual, fine dining, and extensive wine list restaurant. I always took people there from out of town. It was just the best. It's now divided into the Grilled Cheesery and Biscuit Love, and that's how it looks today. Quite, of course. Both went from food trucks to brick and mortar, so that's good for them. Across Belcourt, Jody Faison bought Mother Earth Restaurant, which I remember, and opened Faison's in an old house with a tree in the center. It was 1982. Next, he opened the Iguana in 1993 in what had been Los Cañados, a Mexican restaurant run by my friend Georgia Flathy. We went to high school together. And for the first time, I looked up Los Cañados, and it means brothers-in-law. I know she and her husband owned it, so it must have also been owned by a brother-in-law. My friend Billy Carter built the deck to the Iguana, and all I've been able to find of it is that drawing. Was in touch with Jody's wife over the weekend, and she got me a couple of pictures, but nothing of the Iguana. On the side of the Iguana was a little stand called Joe D's, clever, Hot Chicken Club. When the Iguana closed, the Chicken Club moved around to that space briefly, but in 2005, Randy Rayburn and partners opened Cabana in the Iguana space. My words are getting twisted now, sorry. It's now Bungalow 10. I'm not sure when that opened. I just saw that the other day. This was the parking lot behind McClure's or Posh, and it's now this building. Blasting and construction happened after the Belcourt renovation. I just have to mention this too. While Pangea was in business, we survived 2 blocks on the street being demolished, blasting for parking, construction, the Belcourt renovation, this building, 2 building collapses, and I didn't close for lack of business. Here is an example of a small business that tried to make it up on the part of Belcourt where the hair salons were. This was Global Soup. It was a music emporium and gift shop run by Ray Stevens' daughter, Susie Ragsdale, who was a fabulous singer. Unfortunately, it didn't last because foot traffic to sustain this kind of business on Belcourt just didn't exist back then. Now it's full of restaurants. The one on the left is where Susie's shop was, and this was where the chicken place was. It also had a fire and closed, and it looks like it's being renovated now. But there's several restaurants along there now, and they seem to be doing fine, different than retail. Now, I mentioned that David Akita had the Hillsboro Village Art Festival for 20 years, and here's some pictures from that history. The first one is my friend Karen Sky Miller with her parents. They were all 3 artists, and they set up and sold their works there. Up here is Robert Vantrease, a Nashville artist, and his model is Hetty. I forgot her last name. I've lost my place and forgotten the last name. But she worked at Charles Jr.'s salon, And in this picture, there's Mr. Miller and Frank G. and Jim Shea. Not sure I pronounced those correctly, okay? Tyree's telling me yes. We had Bastille Day in the village for 3 years. Miles Maley did this poster for us for the first event. However, it was canceled in 2003 when the local French Alliance decided instead to host a dinner featuring a speaker on Franco-American relations. Anti-French sentiment was running high that year when France opposed President Bush's plans for war in Iraq. Then I decided we should have some events in the village. And I decided on a doggy costume contest. Having always had dogs at my shop and dressed them all up for ads and photo shoots, I decided it should be on Day of the Dead instead of Halloween because we had a lot of Day of the Dead merchandise in the store. It was called Day of the Dog. It was 2002. Bryce McLeod did the artwork for us for the t-shirts and posters. And then he was on hand to help out along with Anna Zeitlin, Manuel's daughter, over on the far left, and Jane Gordon, who I think was acting director at the Belcourt at one time. She did? Oh, there's Manuel. I didn't see you come in. You could correct me on a lot of this, really. He's the best for the village. Okay, then we decided that we would host an art walk, which is now happening all over town in different places. It only lasted 2 years, but we had fun with it. And I forgot to mention, the former art festival, Peggy Snow, told me that you didn't have to rent a space. You just showed up with your artwork and set it up on the sidewalk, which was a great thing that won't happen today. But anyway, we didn't charge people for putting art in front of our store, but we did schedule them. Here was 2017. What do you think's happening there? Yes, the eclipse, the total eclipse. It was dramatic. We locked the store, and my employees and I sat on the sidewalk waiting for this one lifetime experience. It was dramatic. It really was. That's the middle of the day. Yeah. This April, Nashville will not be in the path of the total eclipse, and even though we're supposed to get 95%, they say it just won't be the same. Ooh, I'm running out of time. These two photos, which you saw when you walked in, are many of the village merchants, as many as I could gather. We did an ad for a couple of years in the Scene saying Happy Holidays from all the merchants in Hillsboro Village. I can't date the photos. Maybe Troy or Manuel can, but I can date it by Chester, my dog, who was there from 1997 to 2007, so it's somewhere in that 10-year period, because Chester's in both of the pictures. In the first picture, you'll see some of the other merchants brought their dogs. Yeah. I got the idea because I'd done the same thing with my employees every year. We'd put an ad in the Scene and say Happy Holidays from Pangea and all the employees. Again, I can't date the photos because I forgot to date them, but Chester, again, 1997 to 2007. Bailey, on the left, was 2007 to 2016. Oh, well, I did the wrong thing. And Coco, it's the end anyway. Coco on the right, who was 2016 to 2019. That's all I have, and I hope I haven't bored you about Thank you. I was pretty nervous about this. I've never done this before. Again, this was my first PowerPoint. It's actually Keynote because I have a Mac, but I did it.
Great job.
Thank you. I don't know. I got it. Yes, Kim.
Really good that you recognized Manuel, who's here, because he's one of the most talented architects in the city, and he, had the corner thing, and I'm going to talk Do you have a picture of the first Fasans? Because actually it was a house.
Yeah,
There
but
was
I'm
a big tree in front of it, and he built that addition over
around the tree. No, the pictures that Megan, his wife, sent me were what I had. I've been in touch with her repeatedly. I have not talked to Jody. She's my go-between, and that's all I've gotten so far. I'm sure I will eventually get some.
That was a fabulous restaurant.
It was. Yeah. The whole village was great, and it
Daniel designed Sunset Girls. He's the genius behind that too.
it was beautiful. It was beautiful. Yeah, Manuel has been instrumental in my business from day one. He found me my first location on Belmont Boulevard, which was 2 doors from him. And then when I moved to the village, Manuel designed the interior and the fixtures, and we traded. Back then, he wore ties, and I had vintage clothes, so I traded him bow ties for work. And then his wife and his daughter got to shop, at a big discount. And he's just been a good friend, and he's tried to save so much in Nashville that they haven't listened to him. They haven't listened to him enough.
Thank you for trying.
Yeah. Jean?
Tell us about the hole in the roof gang.
Oh, the Pancake Pantry?
The Pancake
Oh,
Pantry.
God, I barely remember it. There was a guy who tried to break into the Pancake Pantry and got stuck in the flue and died.
Oh, the hole in the roof.
Yeah,
You got stuck where?
in the flue. He tried to climb in from the roof and got stuck and died, I think. Yeah. But tried to crawl in through the ductwork.
I'm never going there.
Yeah, and I don't know if I mentioned, but, and I can't remember what I said and what I didn't. Troy told me that Peabody shoe repair may have started on the Peabody campus in the basement of a building. Yeah. But it makes me sick about that corner that Manuel had. It was just such a beautiful, and so I think it had to be Keeble. I think he's right. And again, he was friends with Edith and Horace.
Her last name was Caldwell?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, and she married
His Keeble's archives are now at the Tennessee State Library and Archives. Rita Wills and I have been looking through them, but
So
knowing
they're
that name, we'll see if we can find them.
okay. Are they available to look at yet? Because the last time I called, they weren't.
Well,
They might be to you,
They
but
have 151 boxes of Keeble's. And so we've been going through, we've been through like 30 of the boxes, and
Okay.
they just have a lot of junk.
Yeah.
Just Peter, his son, just gave them everything.
that's what's going to happen when I die.
I'm going to
It's-
give it to the archives.
Yeah, but it's going to be a mess. Sarah's going to get boxes and get buried, and yeah. Any other questions? Back in the back?
Yeah, was Schofield in the village before they moved to that corner? Because, in 1959, when I was a freshman at Vanderbilt, they took my picture for the Husband of Vanderbilt newspaper.
I don't know where they were.
And then they took my wedding pictures in 1963, so they were somewhere over
Well, they may have been in that space in 1959. I just know Edith Caldwell's shop, I didn't get a closing date, but she got married in 1960 to Horace Hill, and she didn't have to work after that.
Yeah, because they were somewhere over there, not I don't remember.
Well, Calvert's was also in the area, but not,
And then they moved. Right.
they were,
Yeah, Schofield took pictures for the Husband
oh,
of Vanderbilt.
okay.
And mine was 59.
Well, they may have taken them when I was at Vanderbilt. I'll have to go back and look at my annual.
When were you there?
64 to 68.
You're younger than me.
Well, but not a baby.
Sandra's told all these stories. I've got a little one to tell on her. She's been here almost since the beginning when we were at Green Hills Library, and people signed up with their email. And hers was, you're going to be ahead of me on this, hers was Sandra and Chester at Comcast.net.
Still is.
And so I just assumed she had a live-in boyfriend. And I brought it up to her one time in a tete-a-tete that we had. She said, "No, it's my dog."
And it's 4 dogs ago
Right,
now.
right. And then she recently got a dog. Tell them about the size of this dog and your size.
He's too
Well,
big.
then I will.
Yeah.
She weighs all of 95 pounds. She got a 75-pound dog.
Part pit bull.
What?
Part pit bull.
Part pit bull. I haven't seen this dog, but he's okay.
Yeah,
He's okay. But can you imagine? A dog is just 20 pounds lighter than she is, and
Well-
she walked him around the block today.
He's the smallest dog I've had. 70 pounds is the smallest dog I've had.
Oh.
The first one was 100, and I went down from there. But I have to, about that email, I've been a member of the National Trust for Historic Preservation for years, and I get cards and mail. All of a sudden, they've started sending a card to Mrs. Sandra Shelton and Mr. Chester Shelton.
Well, let's give her another hand. This was fabulous.